Hi, everybody. I'm Frank Stanisci of Candid Frank Live, where you'll find us airing our views. And he's Aaron on the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app. And of course, it's at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate, leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google, Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on Candid Frank Live, joining me is Aaron William Freeland. Hi, Aaron. How you doing?
Doing well, Frank. How are you?
I had to lower the volume on the speakers. It was blowing me away. The intro song was very loud. Stuff was starting to shake on the shelves and stuff. How's your day going?
It's going all right. Got done work about 15 minutes ago and came right here, so we're good to go.
Angie, the producer, told us that she's suffering from a lot of heat at home. They've got the heat on because they share heat there, I guess. It's that time of year, that transitional time of year when, in fact, that is true, where you almost say, why aren't they, you might as well turn on the air conditioning.
Yeah, it's that weird shoulder season between fall, spring, and second winter.
Yeah, the sun is actually getting warmer. And, if you have really nice windows, it'll get warm. That's probably the reason why it's getting so hot in her apartment. I hope they take care of that for her. And I hope she stays healthy enough to turn us off when the time comes. Otherwise, we're going to have to go do a 24-hour show.
Well, I'll be able to search on the fly, so we should be okay.
Stretch. Stretch. Okay, let's talk about immigration in Canada to start.
Sure. Well, it turns out the PBO, or the Parliamentary Budget Office, says that Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada has 65% more staff than they need to process the 2022 and 2023 applications on time, and basically has more staff than needed for all the years assessed. Their intention, the federal government's goal, is to process 80% of applications within 6 months. Last year, Canada was unfortunately grappling with significant immigration backlogs that formed during the pandemic. Now, the PBO is saying that the Immigration Department refused to share information about resources that would have been needed to meet processing goals in previous years, saying the information is protected by cabinet confidences, but that apparently is no longer the case. Yves Giroux says that the cost of processing applicants for economic immigrants is sufficient for the next 5 fiscal years.
Aaron, there's Montreal companies that are tied to Russia. So guess what's happened to them? I guess you know what happened to them. Tell us about it.
Well, basically, the U.S. Department of Commerce added CPU-NTO Incorporated and Electronic Network Incorporated to a list of entities subject to export controls. The CBSA, or Canada Border Services Agency, says it helped put them, these two Montreal-based companies with alleged ties to the Russian military, on a U.S. sanction list. They're both headquartered in Montreal, in the Montreal borough of Saint-Laurent, and describe themselves as online sellers of electronic components. Now, these export controls are going to bar them from exporting almost any item manufactured in the States, according to including intellectual property. CBSA says they're working closely with the U.S. government to restrict Russia's access to products and technology needed for its continued war in Ukraine. Neither CPU-NTO nor Electronic Network have responded to a request for comment. This is as at the time the report was initially published, as at February 7th, 2023.
Things like semiconductors that make machines go are something you don't want through a third party ending up going to Russia. Not if you really want to make sure that Russia has as little potent warfare that they can. Not that they haven't any right now. What they're doing is bad enough. Got to make it hard on them, and good for them for doing that. Seek them all out. Nova Scotia fails to meet pledge. They promised to add 1,500 daycare spaces, and they're falling a wee bit short, Aaron.
Yeah, so Tim Houston promised back in June 2022 that his government would create 1,500 new daycare spots within 6 months, funded in part with an envelope of $605 million from Ottawa. They have since failed to meet that goal. They have instead added 400 new licensed daycare spaces. which is far short of their target. Barbara Ferguson, a spokesperson for the Department of Education and Early Childhood Development, says supply chain and labor pressures have caused the delay. The remaining spaces should actually be created by the end of this calendar year. So they've moved the goalposts a little bit further to give themselves a little more landing strip to try to bring this home.
Apparently, during the pandemic, some parents were hiding the fact that their children had COVID. What does that all mean, Aaron?
Well, I mean, basically, what this means is by hiding the fact that your child has COVID, you're increasing the likelihood that this gets transmitted through a close public environment, where, thanks to initiatives pushed by those who are against vaccine mandates and against vaccines in general, because of these close quarters these children are in, a lot of governments can't enforce mask mandates and vaccination policies, which means more people get sick, which means it spreads, which means there's a greater chance for the virus to mutate. Now, the researchers analyzed answers from 580 parents who had children under the age of 18. This was done back in December of 2021. Many parents chose not to disclose the fact that their children were ill because they said they wanted to exercise personal freedom as a parent. Personally speaking, I think your personal freedom ends when your decisions can potentially affect the livelihoods and the lives of others. This includes sending your child to school sick during a global pandemic. But, hey, land of the free, America, got to have our freedoms. So this sort of thing didn't make things any easier.
Understood.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for parents, they don't want to cause their children to suffer in any way. And, it's basically helicopter parenting in action. But, parents have feelings, and their feelings sometimes involve making decisions about their children that are short-term good, long-term bad. The other thing is that it's about the fact that they're carriers. It's not about kids dying from COVID, and
No.
it's about the people around them. But people lose track of that fact. But the fact is, history taught us one very important lesson: that our children suffered not going to school. So that can't be denied either. So I can understand the motivation. In sports, let's go to the CFL Lions. They signed their global pick.
Yeah, so they've signed fullback John Levi Cruz of Germany. Sorry, it's pronounced Levi Cruza. He was selected by the Lions in round 3, 21st overall of the 2022 global draft. He played 2 seasons as a fullback, a tight end, and long snapper in the European Football League with the Hamburg Sea Devils. He had 23 receptions for 214 yards and 5 touchdowns, while adding 2 carries for 25 yards in 19 games. Prior to Hamburg, Levi Cruza suited up for the Elmshorn Fighting Pirates of the German Football League in 2019 and was a member of the German national team in 2017.
Well, it looks like the Minnesota Wild joined the New York Rangers and the Florida Panthers in not following through on the warm-up jerseys for Pride Night.
Yeah. Now, they didn't actually state why they didn't. They just went ahead and decided not to wear them, despite announcements by the club that they were going to wear and later auction off Pride-themed warm-up jerseys. The organization opted against doing so at the last minute, calling off the jerseys just hours before puck drop. The players were told it was an organizational decision. Now, while some players did show support during warm-up, including using Pride-themed tape and pucks, it's fairly obvious, I think, that by dropping the jerseys, the NHL still has a lot of work to do in its social advocacy campaigns. This is after this mainly started happening after Ivan Provorov of the Flyers sat out warm-ups and refused to wear the Flyers Pride-themed jersey back in January based on his religious freedoms.
There are some beliefs that some people aren't willing to bend, I guess. I mean, it's a long discussion we can have about this. I guess we'll just have to suffice it with the news, or we'll be here for we'll need another half hour. The NHL, The NHL not happy with Tony D'Angelo. A terrible spear leads to a game misconduct.
Yeah. So after a scrum in front of the net, Tony D'Angelo got a 5-minute major for spearing, as well as a game misconduct. Uh, John Tortorella seemed surprised by this because, as we all know, Tony D'Angelo is as innocent as the driven snow. Um, he was unfairly set upon by the Tampa Bay Lightning after spearing another well-known agitator, Corey Perry, right in the nethers. There is some debate as to whether or not this was justified or not, and you know, I'm personally going to side with Corey Perry on this one because while both players may be weevils of a sort, Tony D'Angelo certainly seems like the greater, and everybody knows you have to side with the lesser of two weevils.
Let's be clear about something. We're talking about calling a penalty, and we're talking about calling a penalty that does lead to a game suspension. Spearing, not a very good spot to spear someone, needless to say, but spearing on its own is not a very good thing. That is a very dangerous act when it comes to spearing. A lot of really bad things can happen when someone's spearing. So the Jets, a former Leaf Reimer shines.
Yeah, so this was really nice to see. I'm always a big James Reimer fan. I've got his jersey at home. The Sharks rallied to defeat the Jets 3-2 in overtime. He basically had 36 saves, and Logan Couture scored 121 into overtime to help snap San Jose's 5-game losing streak. Unfortunately for the Jets, they did manage to tie it up, but it didn't go far enough. Dave Riddick made 21 saves. Former Maple Leaf legend Dave Riddick made 21 saves for the Jets as they ended up on the wrong side of this. Winnipeg was also 0 for 6 on the power play. That might have been part of why they weren't able to pull out the victory.
Tyler Toffoli scores for the Flames. They win in a shootout.
Yeah, so this is the same game in which the Wild didn't wear their jerseys. Tyler Toffoli scored in sudden death in the shootout to send the Calgary Flames to a 1-0 win. He went 5-hole on Gustafsson to end the game. So both teams scored in the third round of the shootout, but Matt Boldy missed his, which set the stage for Toffoli to bank it home. Now, Tuesday was the second night of a back-to-back for Calgary, who also beat Dallas 5-4 on Monday. So, a little bit of success there. That's a couple back-to-back wins in tough situations. It's nice to see.
Oilers win another one. McDavid scores 2.
So the Oilers actually beat the surging Buffalo Sabres. It feels odd to say that, but the Sabres have managed to claw themselves back into at least some sort of semblance of playoff contention here.
Percentage-wise.
Percentage-wise, at least, yeah. So good to see them pull it out. Skinner and Cousins scored for the Sabres, and Anderson stopped 34 shots, whereas McDavid had his 2 to push his goal total to 54. And he's currently set a career high with 124 points.
Pettersson with the shootout win for Vancouver.
So this was against the Preds, most recently noted for trading Matthias Ekholm to another team. Pettersson, Vasily Podkolzin, and Dakota Joshua had goals in regulation for the Canucks. They gave up a 2-goal lead in the third period, and Arturas Silovs saw 29 shots through overtime. Rick Tocchet said that he didn't think that the team had their best legs, but they hung in there. And it was a great learning experience, which is what he told the players. If you don't have it, make sure you don't hurt the team. And I think that's a learning experience.
4 weeks till Riley comes back.
Yep. So it has been determined that he did actually require surgery. And that was a hand he put up in order to protect his face from an errant shot. Now, Keith provided this update Tuesday evening before they played the New Jersey Devils. It was unfortunate he got injured 7 games into his tenure here, but at least he'll have a few warm-up games. He was initially projected to miss 8 weeks. So having him only miss 4 is a bit of a bonus at this point.
It could be less.
Yeah.
If it was the playoffs, they just taped that finger to another finger and fix the glove to accommodate accordingly. If it was the playoffs. But it's not the playoffs. Hey, the captain didn't play too, so they were short 2 centers, and
Yep.
they sprung Lafferty into service. And last time I looked, he was at like 56, 58% winning faceoffs. His speed was to advantage, played to advantage. They got a goal because of his speed. He looked pretty good in that position. The Leafs traded for depth. You and I talked about this, bringing in centers. It creates a great opportunity to basically have strong side faceoff wins. And we know that the Leafs consider, we've known it for a while, that they love the fact that they can dominate in the faceoff circle. And they're one of the best faceoff teams in the league. It isn't necessarily the reason you win, but the Leafs believe in the possession game, so it only follows that they want to win faceoffs.
It's very true. That is one of those things that has actually greatly helped them. Now, one of the nice things here is one of the beneficiaries of sort of a little bit of a lucky play here. Kerfoot went up to glove the puck and got high sticked in the head by newly acquired San Jose Shark and now New Jersey Devil Timo Meier. That set up Matthews for his goal late, which was nice to see. Mitch Marner had an absolutely dynamite goal off a breakaway where he totally tied Vanacek in knots. And Michael Bunting finally managed to get himself one. Unfortunately, Kerfoot is now, I think, at 33 shots on goal without a goal. So he's been struggling. I was really hoping that he'd be able to get himself the empty netter, but it turns out that just wasn't the case.
He made a pass where he should have shot earlier in the game.
Yeah.
And he didn't do that. The coach, again, looks a wee bit like a genius, putting Lafferty at center. This team, if there's a lack of predictability for the Toronto Maple Leafs this year, is you really don't know when the opposition is really good or bad, mostly bad, and or when the team is in a situation where it doesn't look like they get a chance of winning. They're unpredictable. they win when they're not supposed to. They lose when they're not supposed to.
No, it's one of those. I'm not sure what this team is doing, but apparently they're doing something right. Toronto went 3-2 on this road trip, surprisingly, with all the noise that everybody was making over their loss to Vancouver, and
Well, when they lost horribly.
Oh yeah, but at the same time, playing over 500 hockey while on a 5-game road trip isn't necessarily a bad thing. So.
Well, let me help people understand how this works. Even in the playoffs, if you play really well and win 4 games, you can play really badly and lose 3.
It's entirely possible. These things happen.
So what's the point? Oh, yeah, that you play better more often than you play worse. And that tour that they went on, it was worth 3-2. And that's for a road record, 3-2. If you're more than 500 on the road, Aaron, that's a pretty good deal, especially if you're strong at home. And that's why you end up in the top of the league. That's why you end up with home ice. That's why, fans can be really celebrating the way the team plays. And the most important thing that I've said from the beginning of the year, and that is that being in the position they're in, they're not hard pressed to win to make the playoffs. And when disasters like happened the previous game where they lose their captain and the guy they traded for their depth, it didn't really hurt the team because the team gets an opportunity to use players who are good enough to play on a National Hockey League team, just not on a Leaf team all the time.
Yeah, no, that's true. This is definitely, we're getting into more of a tryout stage here just to see where players fit in.
A melding.
Holmberg played well, even though he got a 4-minute for sticking Palat in the face, which he should not ought to have done. Steves played well. I was very gratified to see that Marley's call-up doing well. Zach Aston Reese, David Kampf, and Nola Chari have, I think, cemented themselves as a pain-in-the-butt line, and I'm loving it. So...
Well, if you're Lindy Ruff, right, you're looking at a terrible penalty to take at the end of the game. Agreed. But you're also looking at the double minor that your team accomplished nothing earlier, just a little bit earlier in the period, that you could have put the game away with, instead you allow a shorthanded goal to the Leafs. course, they were due one, on the goal that you described by Mitch Marner, which was incredible. I mean, he was lots of moves, lots of moves. The goaltender couldn't keep up. Ended up being a goal. He was really happy to score, and he waved at the fans that were visiting in the end behind the net. They had a really good time. He had a good time. The Leaf fans there that were there had a good time. And you know what? This part of the year is always the type of season, in a season that you'll get a different. There's a whole different feel vibe, because after the trade deadline, you get a lot of teams with players that are gone that are just trying to figure out what they're doing next year. And then you got teams that are trying to make the playoffs. And then you got teams that know they're in the playoffs and now they got to do some experimenting, or injuries happen. And then they're not worried about bringing that guy to play, right? They can afford to say, okay, O'Reilly, just sit down and get better. We'll come back to you. Your turn will come. We'll take care of things right now with everybody else. We've got a lot of new guys here. There's a lot of guys that need to get used to each other. So really, it's not a bad thing that he got hurt. And I'm not saying it's to their advantage, but they're built in a way that doesn't hurt them that way, losing a guy even of his caliber.
Nope, this is true. And they're lucky in that regard.
Last word to you on the Leafs. What are you looking forward to?
You know what? I'm look forward to a dynamite finish and O'Reilly coming back on absolute fire. And I'm looking to see Michael Bunting back on the first line again instead of Kerfoot, because stop.
He's Aaron William Freeland. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Candid Frank Live, airing Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Candid Frank Live, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. And you can also check out Candid Frank Stanisci, the YouTube channel, and check out all the shows that I'm a part of and that Aaron's a part of anytime on YouTube. So watch Spanglish World. Hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Ciao for now.